Okay, so the next part of our module number 5 is about the discussion on the consideration in the use of the work of an expert. Okay. So, in planning the audit, the auditor may also consider using the assistance of the expert, especially in the gathering of the audit evidence. So, if the auditor wishes to use his work, he must determine whether that work is adequate for the auditor's purposes. So, we've mentioned this before in our previous video lecture, where in cases, especially, for example, because of the nature of the environment, or the transaction of the entity, there might be some complicated or instances where the auditor cannot or does not have the technical knowledge, okay, about that certain transaction or nature, okay, in which he is not an expert. So he can use the help of the person who is qualified and trained, okay, in that particular field. So this is what we mean by using the work of an expert. So PSA 620, so this is revised and redrafted, using the work of an auditor's expert. So this deals with the auditor's responsibilities regarding the use of an individual, or he can also use the organization's work in a field of expertise other than accounting or auditing, in which the auditor is not considered to be an expert. Okay, when the work is used to assist the auditor, especially in obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence. So please take note that the auditor here will only use the work of the expert to assist him in the gathering of sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Okay, so please take note that the work of an expert should not be the sole reference of the auditor in forming or expressing his opinion. So an auditor's expert, this is the term that we usually use, auditor's expert, is an individual or organization who possess expertise in a field other than accounting or auditing, whose work in that field is used by the auditor to assist the auditor in obtaining sufficient appropriate audit evidence. So this is what we are actually talking about. So an auditor's expert, he may either be an auditor's internal expert, someone who is a partner or staff, including temporary staff of the auditor's firm or a network firm, meaning the auditor can have the expert from their firm. Okay, basically this person is already trained, okay, in that particular field, okay, in which he is considered to be an expert, okay, or someone who is also working, maybe a staff, okay, in the audit firm in which the auditor is related. Okay, so an auditor's experience and education may enable him to be knowledgeable about the general business matters, but please take note that the auditor is not expected to possess the expertise of a person for or qualified to engage in the practice of another profession or occupation. So this is what we have been talking about before, that the auditor is not an expert of everything. Okay? He may be knowledgeable and considered to be an expert in accounting and auditing, but not in other fields. Okay, so for example, actuary, attorney, engineer, or geologist. So we have the qualified person who are trained and certified in these different fields. So nevertheless, such areas of expertise may be encountered by the auditor, okay, especially in examining certain tasks during the course of his audit, maybe because of the nature of the entity or the client, the transaction that they have entered with, or the contracts, and so on. Okay, that's why this field are inevitable, okay, to be encountered by the auditor. So for instance, the client's inventory is composed of diamond and precious gems. So if the auditor does not possess, actually he do not possess this technical expertise that is required for the valuation of diamonds. There is someone who is qualified and trained for such. So that's why he may contract and rely on the work of that expert. Okay, an auditor's expert may be needed to assist the auditor in the following circumstances. Of course, in obtaining an understanding of the entity's environment and also the system of their internal control. So the expert will explain, okay, how it works, okay, and how probably it is related in the preparation of the financial statements. Another instance is in identifying and assessing especially the risk of material misstatement. So here, the expert will also enlighten the auditor about the possibilities of the existence of any misstatements along with the internal control system or the environment of the entity. Okay, another instance is when determining and implementing the overall responses to assist risk at the FS level. So this is also related to that of what we have mentioned earlier in or during the risk assessment. Okay, another is during the design and performance of the further audit procedures, like for example, test of controls or substantive procedures to respond to the assessed risk at the assertion level. So again, basically, the main point here is that the expert will assist the auditor in the gathering of the appropriate and sufficient audit evidence. Okay, another is in evaluating the efficiency and appropriateness also of the audit evidence that is obtained. Okay, that because this will be used in forming the auditor's opinion on the FS. So he will know if that is appropriate and sufficient evidence. So particularly, an auditor may decide to use the work of an expert in the following areas as well. Especially in the valuation of complex financial instruments. Okay, because in this case, there are trained persons who are educated and experienced in this type of instruments, okay, which needs further analysis, okay, and uses tools or mathematical tools in understanding these complex financial instruments. Okay, another is for the valuation of land and buildings, plant and machinery, jewelry, works of art, antiques, intangible combinations, and those assets that may have been impaired. Okay, so this may be the accounts where the auditor is familiar, but the nature of it, okay, necessitates thorough analysis in which the auditor cannot and is not an expert, okay, on that matter. So another is the actuarial calculation of liabilities associated with insurance contracts and employee benefit plans. So again, there is an actuary who is trained also and experienced in calculating such amounts. Okay, and in the estimation of oil and gas reserves, okay, so the auditor is not expected to be an expert also in that field. Valuation of environmental liabilities and the cleanup costs, okay, interpretation of contracts, laws and regulations, analysis of complex or unusual tax compliance issues. So in this case, he needs the work of a lawyer, okay, who will assist him in the interpretation of these laws and regulations. Okay, so those are the considerations in the work of an expert. So in this video lecture, we will continue with the next topic, which is about the attributes the auditor should consider when choosing an auditor's expert. Okay, so here we will be talking about the qualities of the expert of the in choosing an expert. Okay, so what are the qualities that an expert should possess in order for him to be qualified in assisting the auditor in gathering the audit evidences? Okay, so when planning to utilize an expert's work, the auditor should evaluate whether the expert has necessary competence, he is capable, and he is objective, okay, for the purpose of for the auditor's purpose. Okay, another is, or these are the following qualities that he should possess. Okay, number one is the expert should be competent. So competence relates to the nature and level of expertise, or level of expertise of the auditor's expert. So meaning to say, in this case, he should not only be, for example, an particular professional in that field. So he should also have certifications, or he may have acquired enough experience, okay, in that field for him to be considered competent. Okay, so competence can be established by considering the expert's professional certification or licensing, or he is a member of the appropriate professional body. He has the reputation in that field, okay, and experience in the field in which the auditor is seeking audit evidence. Okay, so this is what competence means. Okay, so this should be possessed by the expert for him to be qualified. Another is his capability. So capability means the ability of the auditor's expert to exercise the competence in the circumstances of the engagement. So the factors that influence capability may include his geographic location, and availability of time and resources. Meaning to say, he is not just only competent, but he is able also to perform when he needs to be there to assist the auditor. So his presence, his time, and resources are also required, okay, if he is capable to perform the competence that he possesses. Okay, another is he should be objective. Okay, so objectivity relates to the possible effect that bias, conflict of interest, or influence of others may have on the professional or business judgment of the auditor's report. So here, meaning the expert should also be objective, okay, in his own right. Okay, and of course, aside from assisting, there is also a possibility that in using his work, it might influence, of course, the opinion of the auditor, because this will be the basis, or this will serve as his audit evidence. So therefore, there should not be any bias or conflict of interest or influence that may exist, which will negatively impact, okay, the auditor's evaluation of the audit evidence by using his work. So though the work of an expert who is related to the client also is acceptable. So we've mentioned before that the auditor can get an expert from their firm, so that is considered to be independent. Okay, however, if in the case where the entity or the client has also their own expert, that is also acceptable. However, before they can engage, okay, into working together with the auditor, so the auditor should first assess the nature of the relationship and consider whether it might impair the expert's objectivity. Meaning, if that expert is related to the entity, probably there might be bias that will exist, okay, in that is that the expert might give to the amount or the quality of his work to the auditor, because in this case, since he is related to the entity, he might be biased, okay, in favor of the entity. So that is very dangerous. Okay, so if objectivity is likely to be impaired, then the auditor should perform additional procedures, or he may engage another expert who is considered to be objective. Okay, so that is for the use of the work of an expert and as well as their attributes.